Have you ever been scrolling, online and you see that headline, the big, bold, spoiler alert warning?
Oh, yeah.
And even though you haven't finished the show or the movie, you just kind of, you have to click it.
It's almost like a reflex, isn't it? You can't stop yourself.
Exactly. It's this weird compulsion. Or maybe you've gone down a rabbit hole online, spending hours reading fan theories about, say, the Joker's real origin story.
Or who Rey's parents really were in Star Wars, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Even though knowing the answer makes absolutely zero difference to your actual life, your commute, your job, nothing.
It's that psychological pull, that friction. Your rational brain is yelling, no, but the urge is just stronger.
Well, that feeling, that compulsive need to know, that is curiosity. It's so basic, so fundamental to who we are. We mostly just take it for granted. But think about it. Curiosity is like the engine behind, well, everything. Science, the news, streaming services, those clickbait headlines.
The whole global economy, really.
It fuels so much. And yet, and this is wild, researchers like Celeste Kidd and Benjamin Hayden over at the University of Rochester's Department of Brain and Cognitive Sciences, they point out that we actually understand shockingly little about its biology, its function, how it works in the brain. It's still pretty murky.
Yeah, for a long time, studying it formally was really tricky. A big part of the problem was just nailing down a definition.
No agreement on what it even was.
Pretty much. Was it a feeling, a drive, a personality trait? Without that consensus, it was hard to, measure it properly.
Okay, so that's our mission today. We're doing a deep dive into the curious mind. We're going to unpack the science, the latest stuff that shows curiosity isn't just some vague mental state.
Right.
It's actually a measurable physiological drive.
Yeah.
Like being hungry or thirsty.
Yeah.
And it has these huge effects on how we learn, how we make decisions, even how we build technology.
And for you listening, we're going to show you how tuning into what makes you feel just moderately uncertain. That sweet spot.
The Goldilocks zone.
Exactly. The Goldilocks zone of knowing. Paying attention to that is maybe the best way to boost your own learning, whether you're prepping for something big at work or just trying to wrap your head around a complicated idea.
All right, let's break this down a bit. Because curiosity, it turns out, isn't just one thing. To get how it works in the brain, we got to define our terms. Early on, back in the 50s, Daniel Berlin did some foundational work. He basically split it into two main types.
Yeah, the first one he called perceptual curiosity. You can think of this as the more basic sensory kind. It gets triggered by things that are new or strange or maybe ambiguous to your senses.
Like a baby seeing a new toy or, I don't know, a weird sound in the dark.
Exactly. That's what drives babies to explore that brightly colored mobile they've never seen before. Or maybe what makes a cat investigate a rustling sound. It's that "what is that?" reaction.
Okay, sensory level. Makes sense.
Right. And it's the main driver for exploration in animals and infants. But crucially, it tends to fade pretty quickly once you get used to the stimulus.
The novelty wears off.
Exactly. The ambiguity gets resolved, the weirdness goes away, and poof, the curiosity goes with it. Babies get bored with the same toy fast.
Okay, so that's one type. What's the other?
The other is what Berlin thought was the main type in humans. Epistemic curiosity. This is more intellectual. It's the desire for actual knowledge, for information. It's about understanding things, filling in the gaps in what you know.
So this is like the scientist trying to figure out a law of physics, or me trying to understand the plot of Lord of the Rings before I tackle the books.
Precisely. It's driven by gaps in your understanding, in your concepts, not just your senses. It's about wanting to know.
Okay, so perceptual and epistemic. Sensory versus knowledge. And then within those, can we get even more specific?
Yeah, we can. You can think about how targeted the information need is. So there's specific curiosity. That's when you want one particular piece of information.
Like who played that villain in Game of Thrones? Or what year did that specific battle happen? You need that answer.
Exactly. Have a very defined information target. But then there's diversive curiosity. This is more general, less focused. It's that feeling you get when you're bored or your brain just feels tired.
Ah, the endless scroll.
That's it. Aimlessly flipping channels, scrolling through social media, clicking random Wikipedia links. You don't have a specific question. You just need something new, some kind of mental stimulation to break the monotony.
Gotcha. Okay, so we have these types. Now, one of the big debates, you mentioned definitions were tricky, is figuring out why we feel it. Is it purely internal, like intrinsic motivation? Or is it sometimes extrinsic, like trying to get a good grade or find info to make money?
That's been a really central question. The sort of common view now, pushed by researchers like George Lowenstein back in '94, is that true curiosity is strictly intrinsic. It's separate from seeking information for a practical goal.
So if I'm researching stocks to make a profit, that's strategy, not curiosity.
According to that view, yeah. If you're just looking at the history of the stock market because you find it interesting, that's curiosity. But honestly, drawing that line is tough, especially when you're studying animals or even humans where the reward might be subtle, like social approval.
So how do researchers deal with that now, if the definition is fuzzy?
Well, like Kidd and Hayden suggested, the focus has shifted a bit. Instead of getting bogged down in perfect definitions, researchers now tend to look more at the behavior itself, the information seeking. And probably the most influential framework for thinking about this is Lowenstein's information gap theory, also from '94.
The information gap. Okay, I like that term. It feels intuitive.
It really does. So Lowenstein suggested that curiosity is what he called a cognitive-induced deprivation. It pops up when you realize there's a gap between what you know right now and what you feel you need or want to know.
A gap, like a hole in your knowledge.
Exactly. And here's the key part of his theory. He argued that this state of uncertainty, this gap, is actually unpleasant. It's an aversive state. It feels kind of bad, uncomfortable.
Whoa, okay. So curiosity isn't necessarily fun.
Yeah.
It's like cognitive pain. The brain's saying, data missing, feels bad, go fix it.
That's the idea. The motivation isn't just about seeking pleasure. It's about alleviating the discomfort of not knowing. It's like feeling thirsty that's uncomfortable, and it pushes you to find water. Curiosity is the brain's thirst for information.
That reframes it completely and makes it feel much more like a basic biological drive.
Precisely. And thinking about it that way lets us study it like other drives. So as we go through this deep dive, we can use a classic biological framework. Tinbergen's 4 questions just simplified. We'll look at its function, its evolution, the mechanism, how the brain does it, and its development over a lifetime.
Okay, let's start with function. Why do we even have this drive? How does it help us?
Well, functionally, the big answer is learning. Curiosity drives learning, and it makes learning stick better. We all kind of know that information feels valuable, right? Why study for a test? Why read that summary of a complicated fantasy novel?
Yeah, you want to know what's going on?
Right. But the really crucial discovery here is that this motivation, this drive to learn, isn't constant. It actually peaks at a very specific point.
And this is where we get that wow fact, the core idea. The Goldilocks effect of curiosity.
Exactly. This comes from a really landmark study by Minjong Kang and her colleagues, published in Psychological Science back in 2009. They basically gave people trivia questions and measured how curious they were about the answers.
Okay, so what do they find? How does curiosity change based on what you know?
What they found is that it's not a straight line. Curiosity follows this U-shaped curve when you plot it against how confident you are about the answer.
A U-shape. Okay, walk me through that. Where are you least curious?
You're least curious at the 2 extremes of the U. So first, if the question is about something you know absolutely nothing about, like imagine a super technical question about, I don't know, 14th century basket weaving techniques. If you have zero knowledge, no framework.
Your brain doesn't even know where to start. The gap is too huge.
Right. It feels overwhelming, or maybe you don't even perceive a gap. So very low curiosity there. But you're also least curious at the other end when you're extremely confident you already know the answer.
Because the gap is already filled, nothing to be curious about.
Exactly. So if I know 0% or, say, 95% of the answer, my motivation to find out more is pretty low.
Okay, so where's the peak? Where does curiosity spike?
The peak of the U, the sweet spot, the just right Goldilocks zone is in the middle. People were most curious when they had some idea about the answer, but they weren't confident, when they felt about 50% sure.
So it's that feeling of, I think I know this, but I'm not sure. That's the peak motivation zone.
That's exactly it. That moderate level of uncertainty, that perfectly sized information gap, noticeable but feels solvable, that's where curiosity maxes out.
And they actually measured the value of closing that specific gap, right? It wasn't just a feeling.
Right. This is incredible. In that Kang study, people were willing to actually pay money, gamble away some of their potential earnings from the experiment, just to find out the answers to the questions they were most curious about, even though they knew they'd get all the answers for free later.
Wow. They paid cold, hard cash, or experimental credit, whatever, just to scratch that itch sooner.
It quantifies it. It shows the brain treats resolving that Specific, moderately sized uncertainty as a valuable commodity, something worth sacrificing other resources for.
And this has huge implications for learning.
Absolutely. It confirms information itself is valuable at that optimal level. And follow-up work, like a study by Gruber, Gellman, and Ranganath in the journal Neuron in 2014, showed that curiosity doesn't just make you seek information.
It actually helps you remember it better.
Dramatically enhances subsequent learning and memory encoding, yeah. When you're curious, your brain is basically primed to learn.
So for anyone trying to learn something or teach something, the takeaway is aim for that sweet spot. Find the questions where you're about 50-50. Don't start with something totally alien or something you already know.
Exactly. Let yourself or your students indulge that curiosity when it hits that moderate uncertainty point. That's where you'll focus effort best, get the most useful information, and maximize the learning payoff. It's Pedagogy 101, powered by Neuroscience. Always aim just beyond your current grasp.
Okay, this is fascinating. Let's shift from the function to the mechanism. How is the brain actually doing this? You mentioned it's like hunger or thirst. Does it use the same systems?
That's the core finding, really. The brain seems to leverage its fundamental motivation and reward circuitry. We treat information much like we treat food, water, or money.
So the same machinery. Does that mean we can get, addicted to information?
Well, that's a really interesting implication, isn't it? The key discovery here is the dopamine link. Remember that Kang study from 2009? They used fMRI, brain scanning, while people did the trivia task.
And what lit up when people felt curious?
They found that higher self-reported curiosity correlated with more activity in brain regions like the caudate nucleus and the inferior frontal gyrus, the IFG,
After known reward areas, right?
classic parts of the brain's reward system. They light up when we're anticipating something good. Could be money, could be tasty food, could be seeing a loved one.
So when I'm dying to know who won the Oscar in 1998, my brain is acting like I'm about to win a prize just by finding out the answer.
That's pretty much the picture, yeah. And the Gruber study in Neuron from 2014 went even deeper. They found that high curiosity states showed significantly more activation right in the heart of the dopamine system.
Where specifically?
In the substantia nigroventral tegmental area, the SNVTA and the nucleus accumbens, this pattern of activation, it basically mirrors exactly what happens when you receive a primary reward. It strongly suggests that satisfying your curiosity is intrinsically rewarding at a very basic neurochemical level.
Okay, but here's something you mentioned that really blew my mind. It's not just about learning the thing you're curious about, right? The state of curiosity itself seems to boost learning generally.
This is one of the coolest, most surprising findings.
Yes.
In that Gruber experiment, while people were feeling highly curious about the trivia answers, the researchers sneakily showed them pictures of random unknown faces. Totally unrelated stuff, just interleaved between the questions.
Okay.
Later, they tested people's memory for those faces, and guess what? People had significantly better recall for the faces they saw when they were in a high state of curiosity compared to faces shown during low curiosity moments.
Oh, so being curious about trivia question, A, help them remember random face, B, better.
Exactly. It's like curiosity turns up the volume knob on your brain's record button.
That's incredible. It creates a kind of general learning-ready state.
That seems to be the case. The idea is that the dopamine released during high curiosity might boost activity in the hippocampus, a key memory region, making the entire brain better at encoding new information, whether it's the target of your curiosity or just incidental stuff happening around you.
Okay, but let's circle back to that feeling. If it's a reward, why did Lowenstein suggest it's an aversive state, like an uncomfortable itch? People were willing to pay in the Kang study. Paying usually feels like anticipating pleasure, not avoiding pain.
Right, that's the subtle point the research is still hashing out. It's a bit of a puzzle. As you said, the Kang study, focusing on the reward anticipation areas, leans towards curiosity, feeling good, like wanting a treat.
Okay.
But another really important study, this one by Jetma and colleagues in 2012, found something different. They found curiosity-activated brain regions like the anterior cingulate cortex and the anterior insula.
And those areas are usually linked to.
They're often associated with negative feelings, conflict monitoring, aversive states, even pain perception. So that finding supports Lowenstein's idea. Maybe the state of being curious, the gap itself, feels uncomfortable, like an itch you desperately need to scratch.
So the itch feels bad, but the scratch feels good.
That could be it. The discomfort of the gap motivates the search, but the resolution, the moment you get the answer and close the gap, that strongly activates the reward circuits in the striatum. The dopamine system loves resolving uncertainty, whether that uncertainty felt good or bad to begin with.
Okay, so information is basically brain currency. But decisions are complex. How does the brain weigh the value of information against, say, the risk of a gamble or the size of the potential reward? Where does all that get integrated?
That seems to happen in higher-level motivational areas. Research by Blanchard, Hayden, and Bromberg-Martin, published in Neuron in 2015, points towards the orbitofrontal cortex, or OFC.
The OFC. What's its job here?
They suggest the OFC acts like a sort of evaluation hub. It seems to represent the different elements of value separately, like it might track the potential monetary reward of a choice and the informational value of knowing the outcome sooner as distinct signals.
Why keep them separate? Why not just mash it all together into one total value signal right away?
Keeping them separate potentially allows for more flexible decision-making. Maybe in one situation, curiosity value is paramount, but in another, minimizing financial risk is more important. These separate value components might only get combined later in the processing stream as the signal heads towards the dopamine areas to influence the final choice. It allows context to matter.
Fascinating.
Okay.
Okay, let's shift gears now from the brain mechanisms to how this plays out in behavior, especially thinking about evolution, this idea of trading value for information. That feels like a fundamental problem every living thing faces, right? The explore-exploit dilemma.
Absolutely. It's a classic problem in decision science. How do you balance sticking with what you know works, exploitation, versus trying something new that might be better but might also be worse, exploration?
The standard lab setup for this is the multi-armed bandit task, right? Like a row of slot machines.
Yeah, the Carn Bandit dating back to the 70s. Each arm or machine has a different, often changing probability of paying out. To maximize your winnings over time, you can't just stick with the one that paid out well initially.
You have to keep sampling the others occasionally, just in case one got better, or a new best one appeared, even if sampling costs you a potentially winning pull on your current favorite.
Exactly. You need that balance. And what's interesting is that humans and many animals seem to have an innate bias towards exploration. A study by Whitman and colleagues in Neuron back in 2008 showed this really clearly.
How so?
They had people doing a bandit task, but some of the choices were associated with novel images, pictures they hadn't seen before, even though the pictures had nothing to do with the actual reward payouts.
People chose the novel options more often.
Significantly more often. The novelty itself acted like an extra little reward, biasing their choices towards exploration. They even called it a novelty bonus that added to the reward prediction signal in the brain's ventral striatum. Novelty seeking felt intrinsically good.
So the brain literally rewards trying new things, even if there's no logical reason.
But the really mind-bending behavioral stuff comes when you look at situations where the information has zero strategic value. Absolutely none.
Like it literally cannot help you make a better choice or get a bigger reward.
Precisely. This is what Bromberg-Martin and Hikusaka investigated in their 2009 paper using a task called the temporal resolution of uncertainty, usually with rhesus monkeys.
Okay, what's the setup?
Monkeys had to choose between two options. Both offered the exact same gamble, say, a 50-50 chance of getting a big squirt of juice or a small one, and the juice arrived after the same delay, maybe 2.25 seconds. Identical outcomes, identical timing.
So what was the difference?
Just the information. One option told the monkey immediately after choosing whether it was going to get the big or small reward. The other option made it wait. It only found out when the juice actually arrived 2.25 seconds later.
Gotcha. So knowing early didn't change the outcome or when it arrived. The information was totally useless strategically, purely about resolving the uncertainty sooner rather than later.
Exactly. And what did the monkeys do?
Let me guess.
Yeah.
They wanted to know sooner.
Reliably, consistently, overwhelmingly, they preferred the informative option, the one that resolved the uncertainty immediately.
Even though it gained them nothing practical.
Nothing. And this preference was strong. In a follow-up experiment, a curiosity trade-off task, researchers actually calculated how much reward the monkeys would give up to get that useless early information.
Okay, this is the kicker. How much was it worth to them?
Get this. The value they placed on that strategically useless information was about 25% of the value of the actual juice reward itself.
25%. A quarter of the reward just to scratch that mental itch a couple of seconds earlier. That's huge.
Isn't it? It perfectly explains why we click that spoiler alert link. We're willing to potentially sacrifice some future enjoyment, the reward, just to get that immediate hit of informational resolution.
It quantifies that raw intrinsic drive to know.
And it even connects to potentially irrational behaviors like gambling. There was a related study with pigeons by Stagner and Zental in 2010. They found pigeons would sometimes choose a risky option that gave, on average, fewer food pellets.
Why would they do that?
They'd choose the worse option if it came with a cue that predicted the outcome. They preferred knowing what was coming, even if it meant getting less food overall compared to a predictable option with a higher average payoff.
Wow. The relief of uncertainty, the knowing, becomes a reward powerful enough to override getting more actual food. The itch is stronger than the hunger sometimes.
Seems that way. Okay, let's trace this powerful drive way back. Let's look at the life cycle of curiosity. Where does it start evolutionarily?
We're talking basic survival now, right? How far back does this information seeking go?
All the way back. Think about the nematode roundworm C. elegans. Tiny little thing. Its entire nervous system has just 302 neurons.
Okay, pretty simple.
You'd think. But research by Calhoun, Chalasani, and Sharpie, published in eLife in 2014, found that these worms forage for food in a surprisingly sophisticated way. They don't just move randomly towards smells.
What do?
They use a search strategy that seems to maximize both the expected amount of food they'll find and the amount of information they gain about where the food is. They're balancing reward and knowledge gathering.
With only 302 neurons. How?
Apparently, this complex explore-exploit strategy, optimizing for both food and information, might be implemented by a core network of just 3 key neurons in the worm.
That is mind-blowing. A 3-neuron circuit is already weighing information value alongside basic sustenance. Curiosity isn't some high-level human thing. It's baked into life at a primal level.
Absolutely. It's a fundamental survival mechanism. And you see it kick in immediately in human babies, connecting right back to that Goldilocks effect.
Right. Babies face this huge problem. The world is overwhelming. Too much stuff to look at, listen to. How do they decide what to pay attention to?
They seem to use the Goldilocks principle instinctively to solve that sampling problem. They need to filter the fire hose of sensory input.
So how does that look in an infant?
Well, Kidd, Piantadosi, and Aslan did a study back in 2012. It was in PLS1. They showed 7- and 8-month-old infants' sequences of visual patterns. Some sequences were really predictable, very simple. Others were totally random and chaotic, very complex. And some were in between. They had some pattern, but weren't perfectly predictable.
And which ones did the babies look at the longest?
The ones with intermediate information content, the Goldilocks sequences. If it was too simple and predictable, they got bored and looked away quickly. If it was too complex and random, they also looked away, maybe overwhelmed.
So their little attention systems are already tuned to zoom in on things that are just right, not too easy, not too hard for their current learning stage.
Exactly. It's an incredibly efficient strategy. It stops them wasting precious cognitive resources on stuff that's already known or stuff that's currently incomprehensible. It helps them maintain this optimal flow of new, learnable information.
And this evolves as they get older, right? Children become little scientists.
They absolutely do. It lines up perfectly with what Jean Piaget was talking about way back in the 1930s. Kids actively using play to figure out how the world works, testing hypotheses, reducing their uncertainty.
There's that great experiment, the Schultz and Bonowitz one from Developmental Psychology in 2007, with the colored boxes and levers.
Oh yeah, the puppet box experiment. It's a classic demonstration. So kids see this red box, it has levers, and pressing the levers makes puppets pop out. The really clever part was the confounded condition.
What happened there?
In that version, the researcher and the child pressed both levers at the exact same time, and maybe 2 different puppets popped up. So it was totally unclear which lever caused which puppet to appear. The causal link was ambiguous.
A big, juicy information gap was created. How does this thing really work?
Precisely. Then the kids were given a choice. They could keep playing with that red box they just saw, or they could play with a totally new, different colored yellow box that didn't do anything special.
And what did the kids in that confounded group choose? Did they go for the novel yellow box?
Nope. They overwhelmingly chose to keep exploring the red box, the one where the cause and effect was unclear.
Wow. So they weren't just seeking novelty, like diversive curiosity. They were driven by specific curiosity. They wanted to figure out the mechanism, to deconfound the variables, resolve that specific uncertainty.
Exactly. It shows how children strategically use play to test hypotheses and build causal models of their world. They're little detectives driven by the need to understand.
Okay, so curiosity starts incredibly early and drives childhood exploration. What about the other end of life? Does it just fade away as we get older? Is that a myth?
It's a common assumption, but the picture is more nuanced. We need to distinguish between trait curiosity and state curiosity again.
Right. Trait is your general personality, state is your feeling in the moment.
Exactly. So some research suggests that trait curiosity, that general tendency to be inquisitive, might decline slightly on average as people age. Maybe routines set in, less novelty seeking overall.
Okay.
But state curiosity, that specific urge to figure something out when it grabs your attention that can actually remain strong, or even increase in older adulthood, especially for personally meaningful topics.
So maybe my grandpa isn't exploring random new hobbies, but if he gets interested in tracing the family tree, he becomes totally obsessed, hyper-focused on that specific gap.
That's a perfect example. It might reflect a strategic shift, focusing that powerful curiosity drive on things that matter most, maximizing cognitive resources. And the research is really clear. Maintaining that curiosity, staying mentally engaged, has major benefits later in life.
Like what? What are the payoffs for staying curious as you age?
It's a strong predictor of successful aging. Older adults who score higher on curiosity measures tend to have better memory performance. They even show greater survival rates over 5-year follow-ups.
Wow. Survival rates.
Yeah, and it seems to offer some protection against age-related cognitive decline. Staying curious keeps the brain active, adaptable, building new connections. It really might be a key ingredient for aging well.
That's powerful. Before we jump to applications, the source material mentioned variations too, like between genders or cultures.
Right, important caveats.
Yeah.
Gender differences seem quite specific. For example, some studies find males report lower interpersonal curiosity, on average, less interest in social dynamics, other people's thoughts and feelings. But when you look at overall trait, curiosity, the general desire for knowledge across different domains, there's usually not a significant difference found between genders. It's domain-specific.
And culture plays a role too, in how much curiosity is valued.
Absolutely. It varies a lot. In some countries, the outline mentioned, Switzerland, Japan, Denmark, curiosity consistently ranks really high, sometimes as the most important character strength people value.
Interesting.
But in others, like Brazil, Saudi Arabia, Sri Lanka, were examples, it ranks much lower down the list. So the cultural environment definitely shapes how much curiosity is encouraged, expressed, and rewarded.
Okay, so summing up so far, curiosity is this ancient dopamine-fueled drive. It peaks in that Goldilocks zone of moderate uncertainty. It boosts learning. It starts in infancy, helps us explore as kids, and stays vital for healthy aging. Now, the big question, how do we actually use this knowledge? How can we harness this drive in the real world? Let's start with education.
Yeah, the potential impact here is huge, and the data backs it up. When educators intentionally design learning experiences to spark curiosity, to create that optimal information gap,
What happens?
the results are pretty striking. Studies consistently show things like roughly a 25% increase in student engagement, and even more impressively, around a 30% improvement in actual learning outcomes.
Those are massive gains, 25, 30%, just by leveraging curiosity better.
It's a powerful motivator. But there's a caution here. It's not about just throwing kids into a pure discovery mode with no help.
Right, you mentioned that could backfire if it gets too complex, too overwhelming,
Yeah.
bottom of the U-curve again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just letting students flounder isn't effective. The key is guided exploration. You need to build on what they already know, scaffold the learning, but intentionally introduce those just right challenges, those optimal discrepancies.
Yeah.
You manage the gap. It's the Goldilocks principle as teaching strategy.
Since guided discovery. Now, what about clinical applications? Using this understanding of the brain to help people.
This is a really exciting area. Curiosity is starting to be seen as a potential therapeutic tool, especially for conditions where motivation and engagement are low.
Like depression or apathy.
Exactly. Think about conditions like depression, apathy, or anhedonia, that inability to feel pleasure. These often involve a dampening of that natural drive to explore, to engage, to seek things out. Curiosity is diminished.
So could actively trying to cultivate curiosity help?
That's the idea. It could enhance insight, help people become more flexible in their thinking, more open to new experiences. By encouraging even small acts of exploration, maybe asking questions, trying something slightly new, you might gently reactivate that reward circuitry.
Using the dopamine system to kind of jumpstart engagement again.
Potentially, yes. Generating those little hits of resolved uncertainty might help promote neuroplasticity and cognitive flexibility, working against that feeling of being stuck.
Fascinating. Okay, one last big application area, artificial intelligence. We're actually trying to build curiosity into machines.
We are. It's a rapidly growing field in AI research. They're developing what are called curiosity-driven AI systems.
How does that work? Do you just program if bored, explore?
It's a bit more sophisticated, usually using reinforcement learning. The AI gets rewarded not just for achieving its main goal, like winning a game, but also for encountering novel situations or for making predictions about its environment and then finding out its predictions were wrong.
So it gets rewarded for being surprised and for reducing that surprise by learning more.
Exactly. It's programmed to find unexpected things interesting and to actively seek out information that improves its model of the world, minimizing future prediction errors. It learns to value exploration and information gain for its own sake.
That sounds uncannily like a human child playing with that puppet box trying to figure out the rules. The AI is programmed to seek out its own information gaps.
It's directly inspired by that biological drive.
Huh.
But just like with people, you need balance. There's an AI Goldilocks problem too. Meaning, you have to carefully tune how curious the AI is. If you make it too driven by pure novelty or surprise, it might get constantly distracted. Imagine a self-driving car getting fascinated by a weird pattern on the road and forgetting its main job is to drive safely.
Huh. Right. It needs to balance exploration with exploitation, just like us. Too much raw curiosity can be detrimental.
Exactly. The source material even noted this connection in humans and overexpression of curiosity, or maybe poor regulation of it, might relate to distractibility, like you see in conditions such as ADHD. So for AI, for kids, for adults, you need that optimal balance. Not too much, not too little. That Goldilocks sweet spot is key.
This has been an amazing journey through the science of curiosity. Okay, let's try to boil it down. What are the absolute key takeaways people should remember from this deep dive?
Okay, takeaway number one. Remember that curiosity isn't just a mild interest, it's a fundamental drive state. Think of it as an information gap, and your brain signals the need to close that gap, kind of like it signals hunger or thirst. It's often the discomfort of the gap that pushes you to seek answers.
Right. Takeaway two. Information itself is currency in the brain. Even information that has no practical use is treated as a reward by the dopamine system. This hardwiring links learning directly to motivation and pleasure, explaining why we'd pay in time, effort, or even simulated money just to know something sooner.
Yeah.
Remember those monkeys giving up 25% of their juice?
Exactly. And takeaway number three, the Goldilocks effect is your practical guide. To learn best, to stay engaged, you need to aim for that sweet spot of uncertainty. Seek out challenges where you feel you know something, but not everything. Not too easy, not too overwhelmingly hard, but just right. That's where your curiosity, motivation, and learning will peak.
It's incredible. Curiosity isn't just some polite human trait, it's this deep, ancient survival mechanism, wired into the oldest parts of our brains, driving everything from a worm's foraging to a baby's gaze, to how we learn throughout life, and even how we're designing intelligent machines. It's the engine constantly pushing us to update our understanding of this incredibly complex world.
It really is fundamental, and maybe that leaves us with a final, slightly provocative thought for everyone listening. We live in this digital age now, constantly fed personalized content. Algorithms are designed to perfectly predict and satisfy our tiniest, most immediate curiosity gaps with bite-sized answers. Clickbait perfected.
Instant gratification for the information itch.
So if deep, meaningful, lasting learning really thrives in that Goldilocks zone, if it requires us to sit with, even cultivate, that slightly uncomfortable feeling of moderate uncertainty, that challenging information gap, does our modern, hyper-optimized, instantly gratifying digital environment actually make it harder for us to engage in that deeper, more sustained kind of learning? Are we losing our tolerance for the itch?